Equality Part 2. In this essay, we will understand about Marxism theory of equality and affirmative actions taken by the government to sustain equality in the society. Marx and the liberal theory. In Marxian economic analysis, the rising income inequality is an inherent feature of capitalism. Marxian economics attributes rising inequality to both the ownership structure of capitalist economies and to rising job automation. In this analysis, capitalist firms increasingly substitute workers for capital equipment under competitive pressures to reduce costs and maximize profit. Over the long term, this trend increases the organic composition of capital, meaning that less labor inputs or workers are required in proportion to capital inputs and increasing unemployment. This process exerts a downward pressure on wages. The substitution of labor for capital equipment, that is job automation, increases productivity per worker and thus profits for the capitalist class, resulting in a situation of relatively stagnant wages for the working class amidst rising levels of property income for the capitalist class. Therefore, Marxian economics attributes rising inequality to both the ownership structure of capitalist economies and to the rising job automation conflicting with the requirements of the wage labor system. Liberals, on the other hand, uphold the principle of competition as the most efficient and fair way of distributing resources and rewards in society. They believe that while states may have to intervene to try and ensure a minimum standard of living and equal opportunities for all, this cannot by itself bring equality and justice to society. Competition between people in free and fair conditions is the most just and efficient way of distributing rewards in a society. For them, as long as competition is open and free, inequalities are unlikely to become entrenched and people will get due rewards for their talents and efforts. For liberals, the principle of competition is the most just and efficient way of selecting candidates for jobs or admission to educational institutions. For instance, in our country, many students hope for admission to professional courses and entry is highly competitive. From time to time, the government and the courts have stepped in to regulate educational institutions and the entrance tests to ensure that everybody gets a fair and equal chance to compete. Some may still not get admission, but it is considered to be a fair way of distributing limited seats. Unlike socialists, liberals do not believe that the political, economic, and social inequalities are necessarily linked. They maintain that inequalities in each of these spheres should be tackled appropriately. The problem for liberals is not inequality as such, but unjust and entrenched inequalities which prevent individuals from developing their capabilities. Establishing formal equality. Equal opportunity is a stipulation that all people should be treated similarly, unhampered by artificial barriers or prejudices or preferences, except when particular distinctions can be explicitly justified. The aim, according to this often complex and contested concept, is that important jobs should go to those most qualified persons, most likely to perform ably in a given task, and not go to persons for arbitrary or irrelevant reasons such as the circumstances of birth, upbringing, friendship ties to whoever is in power, religion, sex, ethnicity, race, caste, or involuntary personal attributes such as disability, age, gender, or sexual orientation. Chances for advancement should be open to everybody interested, such that they have an equal chance to compete within the framework of goals and the structure of rules are established. The idea is to remove arbitrariness from the selection process and base it on some pre-agreed basis of fairness, with the assessment process being related to the type of position and emphasizing procedural and legal means. Individuals should succeed or fail based on their own efforts and not extraneous circumstances such as having well-connected parents. It is opposed to nepotism and plays a role in whether a social structure is seen as legitimate. Attainment of equality requires that all such restrictions or privileges should be brought to an end. This is what our constitution does. Right to equality, one of the fundamental rights mentioned in our constitution, clearly states that equality before law, prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, gender or place of birth, and equality of opportunity in matters of employment, abolition of untouchability, and abolition of titles. However, sometimes it is necessary to treat people differently in order to ensure that they can enjoy equal rights. Certain differences between people may have to be taken into account for this purpose. For instance, disabled people may justifiably demand special ramps in public spaces so that they get an equal chance to enter public or working women given special protection. These should not be seen as infringements of equality but as enhancement of equality. Some countries have used policies of affirmative action to enhance the equality of opportunity. A reservation policy for the backward classes in India was an attempt to provide equal opportunities to these sections of the society. Affirmative action. Affirmative action is intended to promote the opportunities of defined minority groups within a society to give them equal access to that of the majority population. It is often instituted for government and educational settings to ensure that certain designated minority groups within a society are included in all programs. The stated justification for affirmative action by its proponents is that it helps to compensate for past discrimination, persecution or exploitation by the ruling class of a culture and to address existing discriminations. The nature of positive discrimination policies varies from region to region. Some countries such as India use a quota system, whereby a certain percentage of jobs or school vacancies must be set aside for members of a certain group. In some other regions, specific quotas do not exist. Instead, members of minorities are given preference in selection processes. Affirmative action can be and is viewed as a program of compensation for historical injustices, and very few would argue with the contention that historically Dalits and blacks suffered deep injustices, disparity, deprivation, and discrimination. Therefore, in the interest of creating an egalitarian and just society, they need to be given special protection and help. Critics of positive discrimination, particularly policies of reservations, thus invoke the principle of equality to argue against such policies. In India, among the limited positions for higher education in government institutions, 50% seats are reserved for members of economically disadvantaged castes and classes. Reserved category candidates can select a position from the open 50% if he or she has good merit. This results in further reverse discrimination of open, general, or non-reserved candidates. Further, since there are no economic criteria in classifying reservation, poorer sections of reserved class often remain poor, whereas the affluent section reap benefits for successive generations. Also, the poorer sections of open or general category become devoid of access to higher education for even slightly low merit on competitive exams. The difference in merit on entrance exams is often very wide between the reserved and unreserved classes. In India, the term is often used by citizens protesting against reservation and quotas. Reservations is a great technique to bring people at par with each other by giving additional opportunities in education and employment to people who are unprivileged or backward. It sponsors equality. Many developing countries have tried this as a prescription for inclusivity. But if reservations fail to achieve the mission that they are set out to achieve, and the oppression of the backward citizens continues in the hands of the more privileged ones, obviously something is not going right. Reservation, if it promotes equality, is welcome. But if it polarizes the society, it is no less than a disaster. Further, if reservations are used as tools enabling manipulations, then these should be treated as criminal activities. In India, reservations are now in the third generation. No specific data has been captured to prove or disprove whether reservations have had any genuine impact. It must have benefited a large number of unprivileged citizens, but it has not achieved inclusivity to the extent as desired. It is also suspected that influential people have pocketed its benefits. The percentage of poor in India is still increasing. The question the citizens ask is where the benefits of reservation are being delivered and sunk. Equality requires that all persons be treated alike, and when we make distinctions between individuals on the basis of their caste or color, we are likely to reinforce caste and racial prejudices. For these theorists, the important thing is to do away with social distinctions that divide a society. While reflecting on the issue of equality, a distinction must also be made between treating everyone in an identical manner and treating everyone as equals. Treating everyone as equals may on occasions need different treatment, but in all such cases, the primary consideration is to promote equality. Keywords to remember. In Marxian economic analysis, the rising income inequality is an inherent feature of capitalism. Marxian economics attributes rising inequality to both the ownership structure of capitalist economies and to rising job automation. It is conflicting with the requirements of the wage labor system. Liberals, on the other hand, uphold the principle of competition as the most efficient and fair way of distributing resources and rewards in society. For liberals, the principle of competition is the most just and efficient way of selecting candidates for jobs or admission to education institutions. Equal opportunity is a stipulation that all people should be treated similarly, unhampered by artificial barriers or prejudices or preferences, except when particular distinctions can be explicitly justified. Attainment of equality requires that all such restrictions or privileges should be brought to an end. This is what our constitution does. Some countries have used policies of affirmative action to enhance equality of opportunity. Affirmative action is intended to promote the opportunities of defined minority groups within a society to give them equal access to that of the majority population. A reservation policy for the backward classes in India was an attempt to provide equal opportunities to these sections of the society. Reservations is a great technique to bring people at par with each other by giving additional opportunities in education and employment to people who are unprivileged or backward. While reflecting on the issue of equality, a distinction must also be made between treating everyone in an identical manner and treating everyone as equals.